Hey guys, are passengers required to identify themselves during an accident investigation? It's a great question. My name is Anthony Bandiero, attorney and senior legal instructor from Blue to Gold Law Enforcement Training. Bring to the roadside chat. All right, this question comes from an officer in Texas, and the background here is, the officer says, my question is pretty simple. Is there a requirement for a passenger vehicle that was involved in a traffic accident to identify themselves? I can't find any relevant case law, and there's nothing in Texas law specifically requiring identification under these circumstances. So for example, officers are required to make an accident report in various situations in my jurisdictions, and passengers are to be listed on that accident report form. But what if they say no? It's a good question, and I've thought about this before, and I can't find any case law about this specific incident situation, but I can certainly tell you that I understand the case law involving passengers generally, and generally passengers are you're not going to be able to force them to identify themselves if they've done nothing wrong, right? If they're not involved in any reasonable suspicion of criminal conduct. And so my general advice is, if they do not want to be listed, what I would do, if your system allows us, to put their demographics in there, put a note in there, refuse to identify as far as their name, but put maybe their race, their gender, if you have that kind of information, I would put that in there, but I would leave everything else blank. If your system errors out because it will not accept that, it has to have other information, then maybe you put John Doe in there and something like that. But that's what I would do. But obviously check with your agency. There are some situations where passengers are involved in the accident and maybe have reasonable suspicion. Let me give you a few examples. Number one is, you have reasonable suspicion. You have facts or circumstances that would lead a reasonable police officer to believe that they are involved in the accident. Like maybe they're the driver. Maybe a witness is saying, oh no, that the male passenger, or the male, and he's claiming to be a passenger, the male was the driver, but the female says that she was driving, right, before you arrived on scene. Now you have reasonable suspicion for criminal conduct, that they're trying to lie to you. Maybe he has no license, maybe he's wanted and he's not identifying himself. Maybe you have a situation like that. I also have a friend an attorney in Las Vegas, and she sent me something with, this is obviously not relevant to Texas, but I'm just giving you an example of where, I'm trying to bring it up on my iPad here, where she said, she gave me, hold on. She gave me a NRS, Nevada Revised Statute 484E.050, and it talks about whenever a driver of a vehicle is physically incapable of giving immediate notice of a crash, right? And there's another occupant in the vehicle at the time of the crash capable of doing so, such occupant, passenger, shall make or cause be given notice not given by the driver. So there are things where the passenger could be implicated in the accident. So for example, it's a hit and run, and there is a passenger involved, a passenger. Maybe there's this argument that the passenger is now required to notify police of the accident because somehow the driver is incapable of giving notice. We can fight over the terms of what incapable means. Does that mean the person simply refusing and now the passenger has an obligation, or is it because the person is knocked out and unconscious? So we can talk about that depending on what your state law says on that. All right, there's the answer. So don't force passengers to identify themselves unless you have a reason. All right.